Napoleon Hill is often called the grandfather of modern self-help and motivation. His book Think and Grow Rich, published in 1937, is one of the best-selling success books of all time. It has sold over 100 million copies and continues to be quoted by entrepreneurs, business coaches, and motivational speakers across the world. For many people, this book feels like the holy grail of success, a timeless manual that reveals the so-called hidden formula to wealth and achievement. But what if I told you that much of what you've heard about Napoleon Hill's life and work doesn't actually add up? What if the story that made him famous, the one about Andrew Carnegie giving him a secret mission to study successful men, was never really true? And more importantly, what if the philosophy in Think and Grow Rich has been misunderstood or misused in ways that hold people back more than they help them? Let's start with the story. Hill claimed that as a young journalist he was invited to meet steel magnate Andrew Carnegie. According to Hill, Carnegie was impressed by him and challenged him to dedicate 20 years of his life to studying the most successful people in America. The story goes that Carnegie gave him letters of introduction, which opened doors to men like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and dozens of other industrial giants. Hill insisted that he interviewed over 500 of the world's most powerful people, and that Think and Grow Rich was the result of that massive research project. Napoleon Hill is often called the grandfather of modern self-help and motivation. His book Think and Grow Rich, published in 1937, is one of the best-selling success books of all time. It has sold over 100 million copies and continues to be quoted by entrepreneurs, business coaches, and motivational speakers across the world. For many people, this book feels like the holy grail of success, a timeless manual that reveals the so-called hidden formula to wealth and achievement. But what if I told you that much of what you've heard about Napoleon Hill's life and work doesn't actually add up? What if the story that made him famous, the one about Andrew Carnegie giving him a secret mission to study successful men, was never really true? And more importantly, what if the philosophy in Think and Grow Rich has been misunderstood or misused in ways that hold people back more than they help them? Let's start with the story. Hill claimed that as a young journalist he was invited to meet steel magnate Andrew Carnegie. According to Hill, Carnegie was impressed by him and challenged him to dedicate 20 years of his life to studying the most successful people in America. The story goes that Carnegie gave him letters of introduction, which opened doors to men like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and dozens of other industrial giants. Hill insisted that he interviewed over 500 of the world's most powerful people, and that Think and Grow Rich was the result of that massive research project. It's a compelling story, one that makes the book sound like a treasure chest of real-world secrets. But here's the problem. There's almost no historical evidence to back it up. Researchers have combed through archives, biographies, and personal records of the very men Hill claimed to have studied. They found little to no mention of him. Carnegie never publicly endorsed Hill or mentioned giving him such a mission. And while Hill certainly wrote about these men, the evidence suggests he did so the same way any journalist of his time could, by reading newspapers, listening to speeches, and studying their public lives. Does that mean Hill made it all up? Possibly. At the very least, he exaggerated. And this raises an important point. If the foundation of the book's credibility is shaky, then why has it been treated as gospel for almost a century? The answer is simple: because it gives people hope. Hill's central idea is that thoughts become things, that if you truly believe in something, focus on it and desire it with intensity, the universe will somehow deliver it. This idea has inspired millions. It was the seed for later movements like the law of attraction and even modern self-help empires like The Secret. But there's a big problem here. The philosophy makes success sound like it starts and ends inside your mind. And while mindset does matter, thinking alone doesn't build businesses, pay bills, or create wealth. Think about it. You can visualize success every single day, but if you never learn a skill, never take risks, and never put in consistent effort, nothing happens. The world doesn't reward daydreamers, and it rewards doers. And yet countless people who read Think and Grow Rich fall into the trap of believing that visualization and affirmations are enough. Here's a real story to illustrate this. A young man named Mike discovered Think and Grow Rich while in college. He became fascinated. He filled notebooks with goals, practiced affirmations every morning, and repeated mantras like, "I am destined for wealth," hundreds of times a day. He believed that by shaping his thoughts, he would shape his reality. But here's the catch: Mike didn't apply for internships. He didn't network. He didn't put himself in uncomfortable situations that would grow his skills. 2 years later, while his peers had landed jobs and were building careers, Mike was still waiting for the universe to reward his positive mindset. His belief was strong, but his actions were weak. And that's where the philosophy fails. Napoleon Hill's work often skips over the messy part of success: the grinding, the failures, the setbacks, and the boring consistency that actually builds results. Instead, he presented success as if it could be summoned with desire and mental clarity alone. That's appealing because it makes success sound easy, but in reality, it sets people up for disappointment. And here's another irony. Despite supposedly holding the secret to riches, Hill himself struggled financially for much of his life. He was involved in failed business ventures, bounced between projects, and even faced lawsuits for fraud. If his formula was so powerful, why didn't it consistently work for him? The truth is, Hill was better at selling the dream of success than at living it. Now, none of this means Think and Grow Rich is worthless. In fact, there are principles in the book that can be useful. For example, Hill emphasized setting clear goals, building persistence, and surrounding yourself with people who support your ambitions. Those are timeless ideas that still hold value today. But the danger comes when people treat the book like a magic spell instead of a starting point. Here's the lesson: don't confuse inspiration with transformation. Reading Hill's book might inspire you. It might give you energy. But unless you translate that energy into practical steps, learning, working, risking, failing, and adjusting, nothing changes. The real formula is not think and grow rich. The real formula is think, act, learn, repeat. Your thoughts spark your vision, but your actions build your results. That's why at Unhyped we cut through the myths and expose the reality behind these so-called success formulas. Because while the world keeps selling you motivation, what you actually need is direction and action. Now, let's dive deeper into Napoleon Hill's ideas themselves, because this is where many people get misled without even realizing it. One of Hill's most repeated principles is the idea of definiteness of purpose. He argued that people fail because they don't have a single, clear goal in mind. On the surface, that sounds like solid advice, and in some ways it is. Having a clear direction can definitely help you avoid wasting time. But here's the flaw. Life doesn't always work in a straight line. Sometimes you don't know your ultimate purpose yet. Sometimes you discover it through trial and error, by experimenting and failing. Hill's approach makes people feel like they can't start until they have the perfect vision. But in reality, the best way to figure things out is by starting small, trying different paths and learning along the way. Purpose is not something you sit and meditate on until it appears. Purpose is something you build through action. Another principle Hill stressed was faith. He wrote that you must have absolute belief in your goal and act as if it's already yours. Again, there's truth here. Confidence matters. Belief gives you courage to keep going when things get tough. But blind faith without strategy is just wishful thinking. If belief alone were enough, then millions of people who believe they'll become rich would already be rich. The reality is, faith must be combined with planning, skill, and relentless effort. This is where the danger lies. Hill's ideas sound empowering, but when taken literally, they create a dangerous illusion. People start thinking success is about wishing hard enough, when in fact it's about building practical systems and habits. Let's look at another example. A woman named Sarah read Think and Grow Rich and became convinced she was destined to start her own business. She visualized success every day, pictured herself as a wealthy entrepreneur, and repeated affirmations about her future. But when it came time to actually create the business, she froze. She had no idea how to handle customers, how to manage money, or how to market her product. She had the dream, but not the tools. Within a year, the business collapsed. Sarah didn't fail because she lacked belief. She failed because belief without preparation and execution is like trying to sail without a boat. And here's something that rarely gets discussed. Napoleon Hill's writing often blurs the line between motivation and mysticism. In Think and Grow Rich, he talks about concepts like infinite intelligence and a sixth sense that supposedly guides successful people. While some interpret these ideas metaphorically, others take them literally. as if the universe itself will conspire to make you rich if you align your thoughts the right way. This kind of thinking is what later fueled the law of attraction movement, which has been criticized for encouraging magical thinking over practical effort. Now let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with optimism. There's nothing wrong with visualizing a better future, but when people start relying on invisible forces instead of concrete actions, they set themselves up for disappointment. Life doesn't hand you success because you vibrated at the right frequency. Life rewards you when you put in the work, learn from mistakes, and keep moving forward. And yet, despite all of these flaws, Think and Grow Rich continues to be quoted like scripture. Why? Because it makes people feel good. It gives people hope that their lives can change without them having to drastically change their behavior. It sells the dream, not the process. And dreams are always easier to sell than reality. But let's flip this around for a moment. What can we actually take from Hill's book that's useful? There are a few things worth keeping. His emphasis on persistence, for example. He repeatedly said that most people quit too early, just before success is about to come. There's truth in that. Many people give up after their first failure, when in reality, success often requires years of grinding. Another valuable point Hill made is the idea of a mastermind group, surrounding yourself with people who push you, challenge you, and support your goals. Today we'd call that networking or building a strong community. That advice is timeless. Who you spend time with does influence your mindset and opportunities. So here's the balanced truth. Hill's book can inspire you to dream bigger, and some of his principles can be applied in real life. But don't fall into the trap of thinking it's a magic formula. Don't expect wealth to come just because you wrote down your goals or repeated affirmations. Instead, use his words as a spark, a starting point, but then get to work on the hard, unglamorous steps that actually move the needle. Because here's the bottom line. Napoleon Hill sold hope, not a guaranteed path. And hope without action is just another form of procrastination. That's why so many people spend years rereading Think and Grow Rich, watching motivational videos and waiting for their lives to change, when in reality, nothing changes until they do. At Unhyped, we're not here to destroy motivation. We're here to put it in its proper place. Motivation is the spark, but execution is the engine. Hill gave us the spark. It's up to us to build the engine. Now let's step back and ask a bigger question. Why do people keep falling for books and speeches like Think and Grow Rich, even when so many promises don't hold up? The answer is simple: human nature. We want shortcuts. We want certainty. We want to believe there's a secret formula that can take us from struggle to success overnight. And when someone comes along with a confident voice, a compelling story, and a promise of transformation, we listen. Napoleon Hill understood this. He knew how to package hope in a way that felt practical, even scientific. He used words like laws, principles, and formulas, making his ideas sound objective and universal. But at the end of the day, these so-called laws are just philosophies. They're not guarantees. That doesn't mean the book is useless. It means we need to approach it with clear eyes. Instead of treating it like a step-by-step manual, treat it as a piece of motivational history, a book that reflects the dreams of its time. Remember, Think and Grow Rich was written during the Great Depression. People were desperate. Millions were unemployed, businesses were collapsing, and hope was in short supply. Hill's message, that anyone could rise from poverty to wealth by controlling their thoughts, was exactly what people wanted to hear. It offered a light in the darkness, but just because something feels good in the moment doesn't mean it works in reality. And here's the hard truth. Millions of people have read Think and Grow Rich. If the book were truly a guaranteed formula, wouldn't there be millions more millionaires by now? Instead, what we see are countless readers who felt motivated for a while, but only a small percentage who actually turned that motivation into results. And that's the real point. The people who did succeed after reading the book didn't succeed because of Hill's secret formula. They succeeded because they took action. They used the book as fuel, not as a map. So let's get practical. What can you do if you're someone who has been caught up in motivational hype, but hasn't seen real change? First, recognize that motivation is temporary. It's like a sugar rush. It feels powerful in the moment, but it fades quickly. You can watch motivational videos every single day and still be stuck in the same place a year from now. The key is to turn that burst of energy into immediate action. If a book or video fires you up, don't just sit there and rewatch it. Do one concrete thing that moves you closer to your goal. Send the email. Sign up for the class. Start the side hustle. Motivation without execution is just entertainment. Second, shift your focus from outcomes to systems. Napoleon Hill talked endlessly about desire and goals, but he spent very little time explaining the daily habits that actually create progress. Modern research on success shows that systems beat goals every time. Don't just say, "I want to be rich." Build a system of saving money, building skills, and creating opportunities. Don't just say, "I want to be successful." Build a system of networking, learning, and producing value. Systems are what keep you moving long after motivation fades. Third, stop waiting for certainty. One of the traps of books like Think and Grow Rich is the idea that you need the perfect vision before you can act. But the truth is, clarity comes through action, not before it. You don't need to know your life's purpose to start improving your life. You just need to take the next step. And finally, remember that success is not guaranteed, and that's okay. Hill made it sound like anyone who follows the formula is destined to succeed. But life is more complicated than that. Sometimes success comes slower than you expect. Sometimes it looks different than you imagined. The key is not to chase a fantasy of overnight riches, but to build a meaningful path over time. Here's the biggest lesson. Don't worship Napoleon Hill, and don't worship any motivational figure. Respect their ideas, learn from them, but don't treat them like prophets. They are people just like you with flaws and contradictions. Hill himself struggled, exaggerated, and sometimes failed to live by his own words. That doesn't erase his influence, but it does remind us to separate inspiration from reality. So the next time you hear someone say, "All you need to do is think and grow rich," remember this: thinking is only the beginning. Action, discipline, skills, and persistence are what turn thoughts into results. Success is not built in your imagination. It's built in the real world, step by step. That's why we created Unhyped. Because the internet is full of recycled quotes, fake success stories, and endless hype designed to keep you watching instead of doing. At Unhyped, we're not here to feed you empty motivation. We're here to cut through the noise, expose the myths, and give you the clarity to act. So ask yourself, are you consuming motivation, or are you creating momentum? Are you watching others chase their dreams, or are you chasing your own? If you're ready to stop waiting and start doing, subscribe to Unhyped. Because success isn't about hype, it's about action. And action starts now.